Welcome to IT Live, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. I'm Joe Cook. We got Justin Wells. We got Ian Boyd. We're talking Texas Longhorns here today. Going to talk a little bit about what Nick Saban could indicate about the Longhorn offense and go into some recruiting intel. But first, make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Of course, head to InsideTexas.com. And I think first off, I don't think any of us pretend to be softball experts. But at the same time, I think everybody's glad that Reese Atwood made it so a very, very controversial call wasn't what decided Texas' fate against the Red Raiders last night.
Do I understand properly that Texas won because they tried to intentionally walk a Texas batter and the intentional walk pitch was hittable?
Yes.
All three of the intentional walk pitches were hittable. She's never intentionally walked anybody in her life.
One of them was actually hit for the
Yes.
game winning.
On a 3-0 count, too.
She's never intentionally walked anybody, so she's never practiced how to throw an intentional walk pitch, which is actually, it's kind of like a pitch out. Yeah. You practice that stuff, and if you don't, you lose in the College World Series.
Not that hard. I could go intentionally walk somebody if you ask me to.
So here's the thing: in college baseball and in MLB, and I'm guessing in the minor leagues now, you just tell the umpire that, and they go.
They send you to the bag.
You don't have to throw those pitches. So I guess that hasn't made its way to softball. And I guess also, like, used to.
You gotta earn that. It sounds like.
Yeah, you'd see them like hold their hand out and then jump out and take the pitch.
It's like a pitch out.
I wonder if there's like some rule about the catcher's box that we don't know, but I'm glad.
She's never done it before.
Yeah.
That's significant. For a pitcher that's as incredibly talented as her, I don't know if there's a better pitcher in college baseball.
No.
You still practice that. I can remember being at baseball practice and pitching, throwing a pitch out and throwing an intentional so you don't throw the ball into the stands or behind the catcher or a wild pitch. It's a small detail that every great coach in baseball and softball works on a little bit in practice. Apparently, Texas Tech did not work on that small detail, and that's why they're down 0-1.
It's not that hard.
You would think.
It's not, because you just throw it soft. And then
you would think.
Hey.
But apparently it is.
Hey, I wonder if they're not used to, like, the sport is growing, right? I wonder if some of these players are not used to, like, a pressure cooker quite of that magnitude.
I mean, I think Texas – I mean, this is Texas' third championship series in 4 years. So a lot of these – I'm sure
they're not the ones that screwed up.
Correct, yeah. And where Texas Tech softball has not been – I think it's been a good-ish program, but I think this is the furthest they've advanced ever. Like first,
they don't go anywhere near the World Series without this girl.
Yeah, and it has to
from Nebraska. She was like a 1-year rental.
Yeah, so I think I think there's some part of that. But
look, that's the softball gods if they even exist.
You look at there's the ESPN Plus, there's the SEC Network, there's a lot of different stuff to where their exposure is a lot more, but still this is the biggest stage for that sport, maybe outside of the Olympics.
Hey, so, I got to tell you, the reviews, that thing's a joke. Like that game went sideways last night because the umpires decided to make themselves a part of the game. And that right there will kill fan viewership more than anything when you're trying to introduce it to a new group of women or a new group of people that are into sports and stuff like that. And you start this review crap that makes no sense, goes against the rules, looks fraudulent, every angle of it. That's why people are going, okay, so I'm supposed to watch this and take this serious? Yeah, the umpires completely screwed that game up. Can't they just let them play softball like they would in like a little league park and just let them play? The referee, the umpires, my God, they made me want to turn the channel.
We'll be paying attention tonight as Game 2 of the championship series goes down. That was Texas' first win in those championship series. But we got a little bit to talk about as far as football goes. Ian, there's been a clip you mentioned. A clip's been floating around from Nick Saban. I'm guessing this may have either been right after he retired or maybe during COVID, just because he's obviously at his kitchen table. But it's very relevant to Texas just because of the way that the Longhorns may be running their offense. And can't play the clip, unfortunately, without this video getting demonetized. But here's what Saban said. He said it is on defense. It's easier to play the RPO when a team runs a zone play than it is when they run a hat play, which is lead, power, or counter. And he goes on to explain, when you see those types of plays, gap scheme plays, that sets off something for the linebackers. It teaches them and it instructs them to take a certain step, usually towards the line of scrimmage, toward the hole, or towards somewhere, and then it's on the quarterback to be able to read and see that and catch like catching a guy leaning when picking off on first base in baseball. You catch him and then you throw the other direction. But you then get into how this is going to affect the 2025 Texas offense, and where do you go from there after the greatest gives his explanation?
Yeah. So he was talking to coaches probably more in general. So he didn't bother with the minutia of explaining. And so we're going to try to do that for fans now to explain this idea. On a zone play, you don't pull line and you move gaps. You don't create new ones. And these defenders, especially the linebackers, they have to fit specific gaps. It's like you got to think, if they run the ball, you got to think first defend this gap and then maybe this one. And so the idea of an RPO is that you tell the linebacker you need to fit this gap, while on a passing play you would need to cover this zone or this receiver. And then you make it to where they can't do both. Nick Saban's point is that on zone plays, the linebackers can still do both sometimes. And so I drew an example where the offense is running like outside zone here. And the middle linebacker is he needs to fit that B gap that's in front of him primarily. And even though it's moving, that does not take him that far away from his zone, which would be helping on that inside slant by the H receiver. So if you're really good as a defensive line, you could potentially slow up the zone play and buy the middle linebacker time to hang back in the passing lane. So the quarterback, he sees the middle linebacker hanging back to cover the slant. And so he says, okay, don't throw the slant, hand off, and we'll be at advantage. But then if the defensive line is really good or the middle linebacker is really fast, he could still stop the zone play and meet his assignment there while first denying the passing window.
So we got a good question here from Coach Top. What does a star do? It's hard to tell on this diagram, but he's probably got outside leverage here, and he's trying to force the receiver to the inside where that Mike linebacker is, right?
Yeah.
And then this is if he were in man, which I think Coach brings up, like he'd be pressed up a little closer. It's hard to put that on the diagram, but if he were playing man, if it was two man, then maybe
there are coverages where maybe you wouldn't even need the middle linebacker to help anyways. And then there are coverages where you would.
Right.
So you could draw a different example of the same principle. The main idea, let's not get caught up in the minutia of whether my diagram is the best possible example. The main point is just on a zone play, because you're not moving gaps by moving blockers, you don't create as much stress for the linebacker in covering their receiver versus getting over to their gap in the run fit.
Right. So go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You're going to go where I was going to go.
So we'll keep moving on, and says you mentioned they can potentially wait for the quarterback, and this is talking about the middle linebacker. And so the best way to envision this is, Anthony Hill. There's someone who has the ability to kind of play. Maybe Jalen Ford might be a little bit of a better way of looking at it at this juncture, like someone who can wait a tick, see a play, and then still have the downhill burst to make a play in the hole. Just because
Anthony Hill, no doubt.
Yeah, Anthony Hill is probably there, but I'm just kind of thinking of Jalen Ford's coverage ability. But when you go to a gap scheme, and let me pull this picture up, all the guys, the guard and the tackle moving toward I guess that'd be the short side of the field, that really puts that Mike linebacker in conflict.
Yeah, there you got the tight end lead blocking, and then you have two linemen pulling over and moving 3 gaps from one side of the formation to the other. So now the middle linebacker cannot stay back to defend the pass and also realistically get there against the run. And so this is what Saban is getting at, is that when you use a lead blocker or you're pulling blockers around, it forces quicker decisions from the linebackers, and everything that they're ever taught from Little League football, Pop Warner, tells them, you see that guy moving, you get over there and you trigger quick. So your team doesn't get run over. And when you do that, it then clears the picture for the pass options.
Justin, we've been talking about gap schemes probably coming downhill for a lot of this spring. And for players on the interior of the offensive line, like DJ Campbell, like Cole Hudson, like Neto Umeozulu, you remember going back to their high school recruiting days, their huddles were filled with plays where they are pulling and coming around corners because their high school coaches know, hey, I need to get my best blocker coming around. And it kind of fits into what Texas is going to be working with this year.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Campbell, they would have him pulling because he played tackle in high school, but they would have him pulling. And I remember they did that once in a scrimmage against, I want to say, Arlington Seguin. It was the team that had the kid that played for Texas for a year, that corner that was a quarterback there.
Oh, Xavier Bryce. Yeah.
Xavier Bryce. They played against Xavier Bryce's team. And DJ Campbell pulled and disassembled that poor child. I say child. Kid was probably about 6'1", 200 pounds. It did not matter. He lost. But that's the athleticism. People don't understand. Cole Hudson is a sneaky, really good athlete. DJ Campbell, very good athlete. These are guys that were made to come into this kind of system and do this and pull this off. And I think that athleticism is something we always talk about. Large humans. There's an athletic quotient. Right now, this offensive line in 2025, do you realize how much more athletic this bunch is than the last year? It's not even close. Last year's bunch were slow. This year's bunch, Gooseby and Hudson and Campbell, you got Brandon Baker, you got athletes out here now. And I think that's going to allow them to do a lot more of this kind of stuff and do it well, because you're talking about another level of athlete. These aren't just big humans. These are guys that can move their feet.
Before we keep going in just a second, got to show some love to our sponsor. And that, of course, is Academy. In honor of your service and support for our country, Academy Sports and Outdoors is offering military and first responders 10% off your purchase, both in your local Academy Sports and Outdoors and online from April 27th all the way through July 4th. Exclusions apply, but visit academy.com/discount for more details. Thank you to Academy. Thank you for our first responders and veterans for what you have done for this country. Got some good comments in here, Ian, and time to break out the flyover football knowledge. Were gap schemes used often in the old Big 12? Lincoln Riley would say yes. What about for the rest of some of the offenses?
Yeah, Lincoln Riley would use this GT counter play. Although Riley, actually not much of an RPO guy. But I'll tell you who was an RPO guy that would use gap schemes and then have the receivers as far away from the offensive box as possible is Art freaking Briles. Art Briles forced Gary Patterson to redo his entire playbook because he'd be running like a power run scheme, pulling a guard or a tackle in the box, and then have like the Z receiver running deep down the field, and then have like slants or a bubble screen from a slot in the X who are like as close to the sideline as he can get them. He would do all kinds of shenanigans like that, and he forced a lot of football to like just completely redo everything they knew about leverage and rules for what to teach their players to do had to be reworked because the stress was unlike anything that anybody had ever had to defend before.
There's something that you mentioned that I think sometimes gets forgotten. I'd forgotten about it until you mentioned it, is moving gaps. Zone, you're moving the line basically and finding the gap there. With gap schemes, your A and B gap becomes your B and C gap. You're moving guys. And one of the cool things about that Briles offense was, yeah, you spread all the receivers out, but then you still have 5 blockers and the threat of the pull
or
to
6.
move. Yeah, sometimes 6, but they would do it, 4 wide with 5 linemen and no tight ends on occasion. You're still moving those gaps. So even though it's one fewer gap, like moving those gaps in the misdirection, not only of maybe the quarterback read, but also the RPO to the short side, like that's what made that it made him change his rules, and he's going to hopefully end up being a Hall of Famer. Drew Kelson, reading pullers was the toughest part of my transition to linebacker. I can't imagine RPOs behind it. Justin, this is kind of one of those things where we've tracked so many different linebackers in recruiting, and you'll see the guys who are just see ball, hit ball, and then you see some of the guys, and Texas' own linebacker core this year is one of those examples where they make the reads, they make the reactions. They may not have the physical traits yet, but they make all the right mental decisions. And then there are other guys where you can't tell if they're making the right mental decisions. They were just told to go track the ball carrier. It's a very important thing in recruiting to, not just have those physical skills, but to show you can be able to track some of the complicated RPO schemes coming down the pike in your college career.
Is there a better example of that than Leona LaFau? One of the best cover linebackers we've ever seen in the high school level, and he's carrying that over to Austin. I think that's part of the reason why he's so good and valuable. Ty Anthony Smith, that's another one. I mean, Anthony Hill is the standard. We get that. But look, we cannot shortchange LaFau and Ty Anthony Smith. These guys are freakish athletes that understand reading inside of that box. And you know what helps them is the guys that had to play some offense. That it helps them get a better understanding of positioning and where they need to be, no false steps and things of that sort. But to me, I can't think of a better example than Leona LaFau. Again, Hill's the standard, but LaFau, his coverage skills are uncanny for a guy with his size, his background, and his traits.
I say this all the time. I remember watching his film and thinking, like, I bet there are a lot of people who watch Hawaii high school football and think they're about to see, like, slot T and stuff, like just real old school I formation, dumb football. It's not that. Like, you don't have offenses that produce Tua and Talia, or even going back Marcus Mariota, if you're just running, the option. Like there's some real schematic goodness out there, I guess to say. And that means you have to have some heady players on defense, and Leona LaFau did that pretty dang well throughout his high school film.
It's a little bit of projection from you, because that's what we did. We watched his film at Hawaii, and we were expecting to see that, right? Like wing T or something. And then they were all running like spread offenses, and it was like, oh,
yeah.
Leona was prepared.
Yeah.
He was prepared. It wasn't like come out of West Texas, with the 6-man type stuff. Leona was prepared when he got to Texas, and only has gotten better.
One of the cool things, I wonder if maybe they did it in the spring, but sometimes I think they do it around this time of year, maybe over like the July 4th break, is Leonga and a few teammates go to Hawaii and host a camp. at Kahuku High School, and I think I got to talk to Ken Niumatalolo, who's from Lae, which is the north side of, I think that's Maui, and you may not realize it, but like it's kind of country out there, and they love yeah, like it is, it's country out there, but they love football, and they love they love seeing guys from where they're from make it.
They are tough-minded kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
They are different. They're a different type of kid. They are tough. There is no soft coaching in Hawaii. You get out there, you get rough, you get tough. You run around, man. And he had his camp again this year already. I think it's his third year that he's done it. Is there someone in NIL that has been more giving, in a sense, to his community than Leona? You talk about propping up a whole place on your shoulders and doing everything you possibly can for your people. It's just another reason why I'm absolutely in love with that kid and why I call him the Lion.
And then a good point from Chris Bennett. Isn't Akina from Hawaii? Yeah, I think he's listed from Honolulu. And you can kind of hear, if you ever hear him speak or talk to him, you can kind of hear that in his voice. It's pretty cool to hear him, be still who he is. He's been.
AR makes a great point. I mean, actually an excellent point. I don't understand why y'all can't get on board with me about this. You guys are overthinking this thing 100%. I'm trying to get Joe and I 4 days in Hawaii, get away. Y'all keep on. Oh, USC. Oh, Ohio State, Notre Dame. We need to be playing Hawaii year in and year out.
I wouldn't mind it. I think that's a good place.
I've never been. I want to go anyway. But can you imagine early September, late August, early September? We'll be gone 4 days. We'll be back.
Get out to LAX first. Oh, man. That'll be a lot of fun. We'll knock this out before we keep going. Got to show some love to our other sponsor, and that is Andre the Lawyer.
This video is brought to you by Andre the Lawyer. If you're injured, trust the team that secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans with their injury case. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, and wrongful deaths. Don't let insurance tell you what your claim is worth. Hire Andre the Lawyer to fight for you. Principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait and call Andre the Lawyer today at 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. The contact information is in the description.
Always better than going to El Paso. Justin, don't want to see the Sun Bowl. Don't want to see your buddy Scotty.
I would go to El Paso just to say I have walked the streets Malays walked. That's why I would go to El Paso, just for that reason. And I've heard the food is absolutely amazing. Hawaii. I want to go to Hawaii. Okay. A lot more green. Different colors of green. I like the greenery. Go to Hawaii.
This one's a good one. Bucky Godbolt always says the trip to Hawaii in '95 is one of the best trips he's ever taken.
Coach Bucky knows.
Yeah.
I've had these conversations with higher ups.
What is it? Do you remember? I think all three of us went to the Notre Dame game in South Bend, and we were, Justin, I think it was either with the person you rode with or maybe Ian, who you rode with. Just the sheer amount of private jets flying in to the South Bend airport. I can only imagine. I know it's expensive to get out to Hawaii, but I think if you're flying private, you'll make that work to go to, I guess, Maui Municipal or something like that.
We can make it work, Joe. We can make it work. We got the budget. We're going to get this thing done. We got to get CDC on board. We got to get him on board.
They also need a stadium, but we had this conversation already, so we'll keep going.
Hey, Texas has so much money, they can build a stadium out there just so they can have a home and home. Come on, man. Share the wealth.
Hey, Chris Bennett, Me and Justin were in Wrigley when Texas fans took over. It was us and McClyde and some of his friends. I can't remember if they were if they're board guys.
Yeah, we were on the fourth row behind home plate. And I have to say, to this day, I've been to 200 baseball games, and I've been out behind home plate a couple times. I've never had a cooler experience in a place like that. Like, never been to Wrigley. It was amazing. The seats were amazing. Ian and I had a blast.
Man, it was behind us, wasn't that old Cubs pitcher that was like a strikeout machine from East Texas, and you, like, of course, knew his cousin or something?
Yeah, there was some people there that I wore a Tyler's T-shirt, and people in there recognized me from East Texas. They recognized
Kerry Wood.
Kerry Wood, right?
Wood,
I knew Kerry Wood because of his ties to high school baseball in Dallas. And so, yeah, I found somebody that recognized, and we started talking. It's funny how small world it is. But you know what's craziest part, Ian, and I know he doesn't remember this. We watched Chicago beat Arizona. They beat them bad. They beat them like 12-3, 12-4. And I looked at Ian and I go, Chicago looks like they're going to win the World Series. Like, this team looks like
that year.
Yeah. And the very next year, they had the season of their life, and they won one of the coolest World Series I've ever seen in 7 games over Cleveland. But this was towards the end of the 2015 season. And I looked at it, you could just tell. I'm like, Ian, this looks like a World Series team, and Ian's rolling his eyes like, I don't pay attention to baseball that much. And I'm telling you, like, these guys look like a World Series team. And then the next year they make the run, and I'm like, I called that.
I was in the bleachers for that game, and that was a lot of fun. That's quite the experience. There was a home run that landed like a row in front of me. So,
I think Rizzo went yard.
Yeah.
Chris Bryant had a massive hit. Like, it was a good memory.
My biggest memory of that was after the game, because Notre Dame stopped Texas.
Yeah,
new. And then we were all in the hotel afterwards, and our buddy Shane was there because he was taking photos or something. And he's like, maybe Notre Dame is just like really good. And I was like, Shane, you sweet summer child. Don't you see that Texas is awful and that the rest of this year is going to be torture? And it was.
Oh, man. All right. Let's talk about modern football instead of days of yore. If y'all had to pick 3 states that produced the best cornerback talent, which 3 states would you pick? Justin, you
quarterback or cornerback?
Defense, cornerback.
It's one of 3 states.
Well, just throw 3 out there.
3 is too many.
No, it'll work. It'll work. Just trust me.
I'll say, if I'm thinking of corners, I'm thinking of Texas. I'm thinking of Florida, and I'm thinking of California.
You pick almost 3 positions in anything, and your first 3 are Texas, Florida, and California, though.
So here's some data and some good guesses from AR, California, Texas.
Georgia's climbing up that chart.
True. Yeah. So I did a little research, and I looked back at where cornerbacks that On3 ranks as top 20 in their position are from. And, there's some ambiguity here because someone like Jalen Lott is not ranked with cornerbacks, and someone like, I don't know, sometimes there's some ambiguity here, but a top 20, I think, gave more data than a top 10. On3's only been around since 2021, been ranking since 2021. So I've got 6 cycles worth of data, and I hope it's visible. If not, I can give it one more little zoom in. But Florida, far and away, number 1, 30 of the 120 top 20 corners come from Florida. 16 come from Texas. No surprise, especially when you have some high-end talents, in the recruiting rankings, like Denver Harris, like Kobe Black, like Malik Muhammad, like Devin Sanchez, all those guys pop in there. But ahead of Texas is the state of California. And I thought that was curious, especially when you look at David Benjamin, who's visiting from Oaks Christian, coming in this weekend on an official visit. And I was a little bit surprised because Ian and Justin, we've talked a lot about how the beef may not be there in California, even though there's 60 million people in that state. USC, UCLA, even Oregon, they'll rely on like Mater Dei, and that's about it for their offensive linemen. But when you're looking for skill players, Justin, you're still finding that out in California.
Yes, and understand a lot of this, I think, is socioeconomic. Like it's the number of kids, it's the population. So you're just going to have a larger crop to recruit from. I was a little. I'm not surprised Florida's where they're at. I'm honestly that's where I expected. I thought Texas and California were a little bit closer than I thought. I felt like Texas would be probably second, a little bit closer to Florida, and I thought California would probably be a little bit lower, and then Louisiana and Georgia. And, I'm thinking of the Derek Stingleys of the world. Like Louisiana does produce corners pretty well.
Louisiana's right here. Only 2 top 20 corners.
That's weird.
Yeah.
We cover these guys. Texas just got a commitment from 2 weeks ago. Like, Texas has gotten a commitment from a defensive back in Louisiana 3 of the 4 last cycles. And so that's kind of why we're there a lot. So we see those kids. I'm not surprised with California. It's the population. It's the number of those guys. Yeah, we've noticed they don't have the big O-line, D-linemen like they used to have, or at least in the volume that they used to have. They still have those big creatures. Josiah Sharma is a prime example. But from the corner standpoint, I'm not that surprised. You know why, Joe? If you look at the previous 10 to 15 years, where did most quarterbacks come from outside of Texas?
Probably
California.
Yeah.
So you know what happens when you're out there training all these elite level quarterbacks year after year after year? Those kids having to cover receivers get better year after year after year. And I wonder if there's a connection there. California's quarterbacks have kind of dropped a little bit in the last few years, but there for about a 10 or 15 year window, they were among the top compared to Texas. Texas has 1 in 4 quarterbacks in the NFL come from Texas high school football. That's always going to be the standard. But from California, I'm thinking that's kind of the overlap. I think that's kind of the cause and effect. All that elite quarterback play, they do a lot of 7-on-7. It creates really good corners because out of necessity, and also the fact that the population is so immense.
There's another factor too.
Where am I at, Ian? I want to hear Ian on this.
Yeah.
Well, another factor that was a deal with quarterbacks for a while in California is that it became extremely profitable for quarterback coaches to convince all the rich dads in California to give them their money and they could turn their sons into star quarterbacks. And so if you want to be a private coach and live in California, that's good living. It's because it's not California. It's nice. It's a nice place to be.
Yeah.
They took the model from Texas pretty well.
And there's plenty of athletes there. So you could, you can make a nice living as a private coach out there. And private coaching is a massive factor in producing lots of high-level talents because the services will always rate guys who have developed skills and are in the camp circuit above guys with raw talent who don't have finely tuned skills yet.
Yep, he's right.
Is there anything else from this? I was a little bit surprised. Obviously, we talked about the Louisiana aspect, but
the trick there is that this is a little bit of a knock on the ratings,
right?
Which is that like Texas, Florida, California are not that much better at Louisiana at producing elite corners, but there are more private coaches there to develop them, and then you get your 3-star Ed Reed, who comes out of freaking nowhere and is a destroyer of worlds out of the swamp. That happens probably less than it used to, but it still happens a lot.
You said Ed Reed?
Ed Reed came from Louisiana.
He
went to Miami, but he came from Louisiana.
I'm trying to look up. Do either of y'all know off the top of your head what Tyrann Mathieu was ranked?
3-star.
Yeah. And that's
St. Rose, Louisiana.
No, he went to he went to St. Augustine, the same place.
Destrahan High School.
Destrion.
Well, he went to the same he went to the same place that DJ Augustin went, and Jakeem Stewart went for a little bit, and Tyrann Mathieu was top 200-ish, so he wasn't like a nobody, but it's kind of a idea that you're trying to convey that, like, hey, they can kind of come from anywhere and shoot way above their rankings.
And hey, I think you could look at Alabama and go, that's the Nick Saban effect because of his elite DB play and emphasis on corner and safety play. Look down in Alabama, and 15 years later, after he arrives in Tuscaloosa, that high schools are starting to produce more high-level corners in Alabama. I don't think that's a coincidence.
I've long had this idea that when you're talking about recruiting, the states of Mississippi, Alabama, maybe, and Panhandle, Florida, it's all one state. You can have some, if you're from if you're from Hattiesburg, okay, there's going to probably be a little bit more of a pull to somewhere like Ole Miss, but like they're and Nick Saban, and I bet Bear Bryant, Gene Stallings, any good Alabama coach treated it this way. You can't treat that part of the country like it has any state lines. So while like you look at parts of Louisiana, you look at, what's it called? Alabama only having 7, Mississippi, I think they had like either 2 or 3. Tennessee has 3. Like, yes, there are state lines and stuff like that, but you can't treat it like there are any state lines. And so I think that may bump up that state of the Southeast quotient like I'm talking about. So I'm kind of curious. I may go through this for a few different positions. Maybe I'll do it for like, I don't know, if not offensive line, maybe linebacker. That may be a good thing to check. It's just that sometimes with the fact that, again, the Jalen Lott issue where he could be a corner at the next level, could be a receiver, but he's not going to be in cornerback rankings, may make things a little bit difficult. But
tackles.
And also look at a kid like Jahdae Barron, who was a high 3-star, low 4-star, and he turns around and wins the Thorpe.
Right.
And there's outliers to all this, but it's a good study. I like the way you put it together. It gives us an idea, a pretty good sense of where these cover kids are coming from.
They can, like to our earlier point, they can come from anywhere because it's just like which 5'11", 200-pound athlete develops skills. It could be any of them. But D-tackle would be the one to do.
Yeah.
And D-tackle would show you why the SEC is the
D-tackle is its own state.
It's going to be Georgia. It's going to be Alabama. It's going to be
Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, South Florida.
And then you're going to see Texas lower maybe than you think. And you're going to see like northern states. You're going to see California down a little bit too.
Yes.
So
you'll see Texas down a little bit. But for the record, the D-line crop is cycling back up in the state of Texas, and it begins in 2027. So I like the fact that Texas may not have to drive back and forth to Georgia on a commute in the class of 2027 because the D linemen in state in Texas are gorgeous.
One other thing that I've somewhat realized throughout this process is that as the classes keep going, there was more separation from, in California, strict limits on football because of pandemic policy. It was tough to play football out there for a couple of years.
It's tough to play football. That's the problem with California. This number could be higher, Joe, if they didn't have the issues with high school football out there.
So I went to where the 5 stars are coming from, or projected 5 stars, and California is still on a good clip on that as well. So I think that anything or almost anything COVID related that may have hampered California football as far as cornerback production, I think is out of the data at this point. Maybe it affects other positions and, the sport at large in that state, but I think at this point they've gotten it out of the system. All right, we've got some super chats, so we have not gone through, and
it's been a minute since we've had super chat, so I'm a little fired up. I need coffee money.
I know. Brett Nelson, great question. Top 5 wins of the Sark era. Oh boy, this one
does that include the playoffs?
Yeah.
I've got a list. If you guys want me to go, because I saw this and I've been thinking about it while you guys were talking about California.
You multitasking son of a gun.
Okay, here's my list. I'm going to go reverse order. 5 at Michigan. Michigan ended up not being very good, but just the hype around that game, and they were defending national champions.
They were good enough to beat the national champions.
Yeah. Texas carved them up. Just kind of affirmation of hype, like Texas is here.
Okay.
4, Arizona State in the playoffs. It got you back to the semifinals, and also it staved off. Just not losing that game was pretty big, in my opinion. Okay?
Yeah.
It wasn't like a great accomplishment to beat Arizona State when you look back in history, but avoiding disaster there and making it to the semifinals for a second consecutive season, a big deal.
Arizona State came back in that game as a kind of a flukish way, but keep going.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we won't argue that.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Number 3,
yeah.
You have a point. 3 at Texas A&M. Just cemented Texas is back. Go A&M, go tie yourself back to the radiator, you know.
The stepchild whippings continued like they should, because you're a stepchild. You're going to get beat.
Number 2, Big 12 championship win over Oklahoma State.
Interesting.
Number 1 at Alabama in 2023.
So there are a couple ones missing from your – I like your list. I think it's tough to put them all in order. I have 3 that I think you missed that I think deserve some –
but you got to – I was about to say, if you think you missed them, we got to figure out which to put in and take out. But go ahead and set the floor.
And
I bet you mentions – I have a couple honorable mentions, and I bet you'll list 1 or 2 of them.
So
yeah.
I don't agree about the number 1, but that Clemson win was big.
What about that 41-0 win over Oklahoma, or 42-0 or something like that?
So Clemson, the Clemson playoff win, you beat a conference champion, you bounce back after losing a SEC championship game. That's a tough one. That's a good win, and you win convincingly. I think
it's a good team.
A 2-touchdown win over that team is pretty convincing. Kansas State.
Would you put that over my 5, or would you just honorable mention?
I may put it over Michigan.
Ooh.
I think Michigan is the odd man out in your list.
Okay.
Because they ended up.
I think Michigan gave last year's season a hot dose of confidence.
It did, but then again, I'm also bringing in, as Ryan Nelson, the K-State game in 2023.
I almost did that one.
Paul and I had a discussion last year about what the most important games in the history of Memorial Stadium are, because for the most part, any game against a top 5 team was going to be in the Cotton Bowl. And we bounced around like wishbone ones and the Ricky game, but we were kind of like, we may have to include this one because with the backup quarterback and all that, if Texas loses that one, their playoff hopes are gone. If they win that one, as they did in exciting fashion, they do it big. And then what was the other one? I think you have to put.
Is that the game where Will Howard, where Tavondre sacked him at the last play, or he threw a pick or a loose ball or something? Okay.
Yep.
I remember that one. Man, that game tilted sideways fast in the second half.
Malik Murphy started, had some struggles. Ryan Watts made one of the best heady defensive plays that a corner can make. Ben Stinnett was great, but Watts covered him. And then I think you got to include probably 49-0. You
have to.
Not since the 2005 game had you seen Texas just push Oklahoma around like that.
And did it
not only on the field, but on the scoreboard too.
I hate to do this, but The problem with I tried to think of an Oklahoma game to include because that's the most important game on the schedule every year. Sark has yet to beat a good Oklahoma team in the shootout.
Don't say that again.
49-0. That was a garbage team.
It was
a headless chicken that Texas. All they did was like step on it so that it could just slowly bleed out instead of running around in circles. And then last year's Oklahoma team was one of the worst offenses I've ever seen from a blue blood program in history.
Yes. Yeah, it was Tyrone Swoop level bad.
Yeah, it was. So I just,
I see where Ian's got a valid point. He's looking at how important it was because of the matchup. I get that. I think you put 49-0 on OU in a year, and the rest of your year is a good time. It doesn't happen a lot. I mean, when's the last time they had before that shut out Oklahoma in that game? Like it was a dominant game, but again, Oklahoma wasn't the Oklahoma we've been used to seeing in the last 10 to 15 years.
The fact that they shut them out, you're probably right. That's just always going to go down now as Texas shut out Oklahoma.
Justin,
and that was also Quinn Ewers kind of, hey, I'm planting my flag. Like, hey, this is my Horns team.
I think you're right. I think I'd put that one over the Michigan game.
Justin, any others? I think we hit the big ones.
I think you guys covered it. I'm always here for an opinion, but actually, I think Ian and you hit it really well. That as long as you included the 49-0 as at least honorable mention, I'm with you. I think the Michigan one was a little bit bigger just because it was similar to what it did to LSU in 2019 when they beat Austin. Beat Texas in Austin. Like even Joe Burrow said, that game is what kind of like clicked in our head. We can do this. I think the Michigan game gave Texas all that confidence to the season that they rode on last year.
One other game.
And Michigan, like comparative to what you were saying about Oklahoma, Michigan wasn't that great. That offense was terrible. The defense was pretty salty. They wound up being pretty good, but that offense was absolute terror.
Yeah.
One other game that I think may increase in historical import when we look back in a few years was Texas winning their SEC opener against Mississippi State with Arch Manning at the helm. It was not a tough game. It ended up being
closer than you'd think.
It was a little bit tough. It wasn't like a big.
You weren't worried, but it was closer.
It wasn't a big time opponent, but it was the SEC opener for Texas, and it was Arch Manning at the helm. And so I think that game will, at the very least, that game is going to end up carrying more historical significance than you would think.
It'll be like Ricky in 95 at where, Justin?
Rainbow Warrior Field, baby.
Oh my gosh.
All right, we'll keep going.
Hey, that was a fun game to watch if you got to watch that game. You had to stay up half the night.
I know. AR, outside of A&M, what home game would be the best to attend this year?
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, man. Let's see.
Don't say Arkansas because Arkansas fans are going to come. That's just going to decrease the value of Austin for about 48 hours.
Here, let me figure out which of the here's the thing.
Your home schedule is brutal.
I would say that Sam Houston game. It's at night. You're gonna have fun. The team's probably gonna win. They're gonna be favored by 30. Like you're gonna see everybody play. Like go enjoy it. Go have what should be a stress-free time at DKR at night. Enjoy the whole day. Because, okay, what are your other options? You got San Jose State at 11 a.m. on September 6th, UTEP at 3:15 p.m. on the next week, Vanderbilt at home on November 1st, and then Arkansas, and then A&M. Go have fun. Like, have a stress-free day. Like, get in, get out, enjoy everything, see your favorite underclassmen play. Like,
I'm still looking for one game that I can take off to take my son because it's the one experience we haven't had. He has never been to a Texas football game. He's been to a spring game. He's never been to a Texas football game. Sam Houston State would be the game. If I put in a request, it would be, hey, we're going to wing it tonight. Let's do Sam Houston State. So
You should do it. Yeah. Do it. I'll go. I'll sit in your spot in the box.
You'll probably already be there.
This
year's schedule isn't great, but in the future, there's going to be a lot better home games. And here's the beauty of Texas: no matter what their home schedule is, if they host another home playoff game, that is the best game to attend.
Yeah, I think
that Clemson game was about as cool as it gets.
You understand that, like, the circumstances that get you into a home playoff game means like a slip up somewhere. It was still really cool. And we can talk about like, but you have to play back-to-back weeks, short break.
Don't care.
That's all true. But like,
Sark would trade that in a second. CDC would trade that in a second.
It's still really cool. Now, playing on the road, that's tough because, as you saw, and there are a bunch of factors, like every road first-round team lost. Indiana lost to Notre Dame. SMU lost to Penn State. Clemson lost, and then Tennessee lost. There are a lot of factors behind that, but it's big to have.
Yeah, in each example there, the team that won was significantly better. But right. I get your point.
Yeah. We'll keep going with this. Read Eric's article this morning noting Derek Williams' return.
The Raptor. As return of the Raptor.
Can we go over who we think the starting DBs will be for the Ohio State game? All right, let's get the knowns out of the way. Malik Muhammad.
Manny Muhammad's locking it down.
Michael Taff.
Michael Taff has a spot. He's the quarterback.
Do we want to give Jalen Gilbo the third spot? All right.
Are we giving Jelani the star?
Well, Jalen Gilbo is not etched in stone, but
right, that's him or Kobe Black.
Is there for the sculptor, I guess to say.
Right, it's him or Kobe Black for the other spot. They're going to take turns, and there's going to be a rotation.
So star and free safety are what we have to figure out, correct?
Yes. If Jelani's at star, then I can see Gilbo at the other corner.
I think they want – I was rewatching the Clemson game for some clips to do some of the teaching series I've been doing with LC on single high and two high defense, and I think there's a lot of reasons why they want Gilbo at corner. I don't think he was I think that's a better fit for him than nickel.
I think so too.
You think that's I know it's a better fit than nickel.
Well, remember,
nickel was tough for him against the better teams.
Nickel is the toughest DB spot on the field.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I was pleasantly surprised how well he adapted to that last year.
Right. That position.
Outside of that one mistake on that
Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where that position, you're defending receivers with two-way goes pretty often. And that's real tough. Like, even I think there are a lot of people who are down on Jahdae Barron after 2022 and 3 are like, whoa, he's like average at star or above average. We could improve. But that's the toughest position. It really is the toughest position on that defense.
Defensive backs hate doing it, but if it can get you on the field quicker, they will do it. And that's why I think Jelani McDonald could be special at that spot, because he can cover like a corner and he can hit like a safety.
And he's played it. He did it.
He's played it. He's got linebacker in his genes, man. And that's essentially what a star is against the run.
Yeah. Another good one from Chris Bennett. Does Jack Endries have a Sanders helm type season in 2025?
Oh, yes. That kid's getting drafted because of his 9-month stay in Austin.
Yeah, they're going to have to still need to invest in Jordan Washington because he will be needed before long. Or Townsend or Winston or whoever it is.
Nick Townsend is going to be the guy people need to know. But Amari Winston is the guy that flashed and turned some heads and really got some respect of his teammates in the last spring. But yeah, that's Nick Townsend.
We can answer this AR question real fast.
What's that?
Could Gilbo have the same outcome Barron had after moving to outside defensive back? No. I mean, he might be good, but
he'll be good, but no.
Barron was amazing.
Barron made the game 10 on 10.
Barron's one of the smartest football players I've ever met in my life.
About 10.5 or 10.5 on 10.
Yeah, like that's going to be tough to replicate.
If you put brains of the last decade or so of DBs, You got a 1600 SAT in Jahdae Barron, and you got the same thing with Jaron Thompson. Like, those are the two of the smartest kids I've ever met in my life playing football. Barron is going to be – there's no replicating that.
And it'll be Matt, man, if you want to win the AFC West, considering who's in that division, it's probably pretty nice to have Patrick Surtain and Jahdae Barron there defending against
three other Texas safeties behind you.
Yeah, it's going to be
three others.
It's going to be.
There's a lot of horns in Denver, guys.
Who's the defensive coordinator for Denver? Isn't it still Vance Joseph? Former.
Yeah, no, it should be. It's going to be PJ Locke when he retires.
Current Denver defensive coordinator and former Denver head coach Vance Joseph, I think, is how it goes. So lots of good corners there. Justin, we've got recruiting. We'll be back on Recruiting Scoop tomorrow, but
we got to do this again.
Oh man, any big names that we talked about? Dave and Benjamin. Give us one more big name that people should be excited or heading to campus.
Man, just one?
Just one.
Look, here's the thing about this weekend. There's not a lot of guys coming in, but the guys that are coming in are muy importante. Okay? And I'm going to tell you, Lamar Brown is the funnest. That's the most interesting. That's the recruitment they got to catch up on. But that guy is a freak on the O-line or D-line. I can't remember watching a recruit going, you could make an impact on both sides immediately. And Lamar Brown could. But I'm going to go a little bit different. I think the edge position gets some clarity after this OV weekend. So I'm thinking about Jaraylin McCoy and Jamarian Carlton.
Ian, you want to take on this one? Deep dive preview?
Yeah, we talk about, I didn't remember what because we're recording the day before, usually. Today's deep dive is on the FPI rankings that came out on ESPN the other day, how these work. They're very similar to the SP Plus. I don't know why they have both. How they work, what they're good at noticing, what they're not good at noticing, and then me and Paul spitball on some teams that may be over or undervalued by how those projections are weighted.
I got to listen to Paul with Homer the other day. How much did y'all dog on Arkansas?
He dogs on Arkansas a little bit more.
Okay, good. Yeah, I saw that logo and I'm like, what is going on? And I also didn't see the Iowa State logo. And I know they lose their top two receivers, but it's gonna be tough for me to bet against Matt Campbell, Jim Heacock, and then Rocco Beck.
I was reading a Sheon article on the top transfers in the Big 12 for this coming year. And I didn't know before reading it that they'd added a pretty good transfer receiver to help replace those guys. So you may be onto something with those Cyclones.
We'll look up and see Rocco Beck picked in like the 6th round, I feel like, in a couple of years.
How tall is he again? Isn't his dad like a former NFL
Anthony
player?
Beck. His dad Anthony Beck, who was like a 6'6" tight end for the New York Jets.
I think so. Rocco
who has the distinct honor of being the Pop-Tarts Bowl MVP.
Do you know how much pull you get with that trophy when they walk in your apartment?
I know. He's
you
listed.
Can put your own. It's a trophy that it's its own toaster. You can toast Pop-Tarts in your trophy.
He's listed at 6'1", 210, and he's from the same high school as Grayson Littleton, Wiregrass Ranch down in Tampa. Yeah, I think Rocco's going to be pretty darn good.
I think Littleton was from Colorado. Is he from Tampa?
Littleton is not from Littleton, Colorado. He is from Wiregrass.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I was like, why do I think he's
Grayson? I only remember Wiregrass because of Grayson Littleton. I had never heard of that, and I thought, man, that sounds like a steak joint in East Texas or something. It's like, no, this is a suburb of Tampa.
Oh, no wonder he's so fast.
Oh man, Pop-Tarts Bowl. They had some good shirts. I know Texas can't play in there, but
Sugar Father, we are not removing that trophy. I don't care what the wife says, or the missus, or the girlfriend, or the mistress, or the Jordan Hudson. It doesn't matter. I am keeping a trophy that toasts my Pop-Tarts.
Deal breaker. If she says get rid of it, she's not the right one.
Amen.
Oh man, yeah.
Amen. That's gospel.
Get you someone who loves the Pop-Tarts Bowl, right? That's the success.
If you can match up the Pop-Tarts Bowl and the Cheez-It Bowl, we got something going on. We got some cross promotion going, guys. We're idea people. It's just the way we roll it inside Texas.
Nothing boring like the Alamo Bowl. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Of course, head to InsideTexas.com. We'll have all the stuff on recruiting, official visits, and so much more over the course of the weekend. Justin, thank you. Ian, thank you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on IT Live, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors.